Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Camelia Landrum, your Executive Director for the Detroit branch NAACP. And on behalf of our president and all of our members, our executive committee members that are present, thank you so much for joining us tonight for this community educational forum. Tonight, we will be talking about guns and the law, what it means to you personally. And it seems to be such a timely subject as so many people, one, you have guns in the country, people that don't know how to properly carry weapons, and those that don't know the law. And we want to make sure that as a Detroit branch in NAACP, we are equipping our guests or equipping our members, equipping our community with the best information that we can to keep them safe and to keep them protected. If you did not see the news today, you saw in Brooklyn, there was a mass shooting and many people were injured, critically injured on the subway. And so education and conversation around guns and the use of guns in our community is very critical right now. I want to thank our Criminal Justice Committee for pulling this forum together. We have a very dynamic panel, those that are well educated, who know the law, those in law enforcement in many different levels, and also community activists, legal activists that are all present tonight to give you information that you will deem necessary, and hopefully you will share with those that you love so that they may be educated on this topic as well. We will record the session, and so it will be available afterward. And at this time, I would like to bring to the virtual screen Mr. Darrell Woods, who is a member of our Criminal Justice Committee. He is also a past Great Expectation winner for the Detroit branch NAACP, and he really has so many titles because he just works with us on so many different levels and continues to volunteer. I know that this work is personal to his heart, to his life's testimony. And so I would like to bring him up as he gives us the purpose for this evening, and we continue with tonight's program. Mr. Woods, the floor is yours.
Absolutely. Thank you very kindly, Director Landrum, and thank you to the Criminal Justice Committee. Teamwork make the dream work. This particular panel discussion is going to deal with the nuances of the law as relates to gun ownership and gun responsibility. We thought it was very, very important to be able to educate our community about open carry versus CPL and all of those things. A lot of people been getting snared into the system thinking that they are following the law, but in fact are not following the law. And then there has been some heavy-handed approaches in terms of dealing with some of our brothers and sisters who are law-abiding citizens who made a lapse in judgment because they're out of ignorance. And so we want to find ways to create opportunities so that they could be diverted and have opportunities to be able to live out full citizenship without getting that criminal label. And so we are very, very thankful to everyone, and we're looking for a robust discussion on this particular issue. Thank you very kindly, Ms. Moore.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Danielle Stephen Atara, and I am a committee member of the Criminal Justice Committee. And it's my pleasure this evening to introduce you to our moderator, Dorian Tyus. As I previously stated, he serves as the chair of the Criminal Justice Committee, but he also serves as an ordained minister, attorney, executive, and public speaker. His life passion includes educating, organizing, and mobilizing marginalized communities for the purpose of achieving social and economic equity. It's my pleasure to serve under his leadership, and it is now my pleasure to turn the program over to Mr. Tyus.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Good evening, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the members of the Criminal Justice Committee for all of their hard work in terms of putting this forum together. We have a a very exciting panel today of experienced, knowledgeable, and very active community leaders, officials, and individuals that will help us navigate this very important topics, specifically around personal responsibility around gun ownership. And at this time, I would like to introduce our distinguished panel, starting with, in no particular order here, based on what's on my screen here. First off, we have the Honorable Regina D. Thomas. Judge Regina Thomas was elected to the Wayne County 3rd Judicial Circuit Court November 2018 and is assigned to the Criminal Division. Judge Thomas practiced law for over 2 decades. Prior to taking the bench, she spent the majority of her legal career providing legal service, civil legal services, and indigent defense to under-resourced people in our community. She was most recently employed with Lakeshore Legal Aid as the director of its counsel and advocacy law line. She has a Bachelor's of Science degree from Tennessee State University and a Doctorate of Jurisprudence from Vanderbilt School of Law. She is a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated and serves on the board of the Youth Connection Incorporated. Very happy to have you, Judge Regina Thomas. Thank you for being here. The next individual on our panel is our Sheriff, Wayne County Sheriff Raphael Washington. Wayne County Sheriff Washington's primary duties are to uphold the constitutional laws of the county. The mandated county duties are the protection of the county parks, courts, and jails. He has nearly 4 decades of solid law enforcement and management experience. Prior to joining the sheriff's office in 2009, he worked for 24 years as a Detroit police officer, and he has extensive law enforcement background. Sheriff Washington is a graduate of Cleary University, earning a Bachelor's of Science degree in Criminal Justice Management. He is also a graduate of Eastern Michigan University School of Police Staff and Command. Graduating from the National FBI Academy Session 248, Sheriff Washington has also earned an executive certificate at Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government. He has served as a firearms instructor for many years and is passionate about educating the community on gun safety. Sheriff Washington's approach to instruction and his personal attention to his students has earned him numerous accolades for those who have attended his classes. And as the top leader within the Wayne County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Washington is committed to serving the citizens of Wayne County. It's a pleasure to have you, Sheriff Washington, here tonight. Next on my screen here, we have First Assistant Chief Todd A. Beddison. He is currently the second in command of the Detroit Police Department, and he is committed to continuing to bridge the gap between the community and law enforcement. First Assistant Chief Beddison has been consistently rewarded for his hard work and dedication to building a better Detroit. His successes are a direct result of his expertise in management, as well as his commitment to personal and professional excellence. First Assistant Chief Beddison's approach to bridging the gap between the police and community is centered around working with all community stakeholders, and he prefers a grassroots approach. It's a pleasure to have you this evening, Assistant Chief Beddison. Next on my screen here, we have Attorney Jeffrey Lee Edison. Attorney Edison, representing the National Conference of Black Lawyers, has practiced law primarily as a criminal defense trial lawyer since May 1976. He has been a member of the National Conference of Black Lawyers since 1974, a current member, board of directors of NCBL. He's a member of NCBL Michigan chapter and a member of the Legal Redress Committee for the Detroit branch NAACP. Mr. Edison has also participated in various sponsored programs by incarcerated people with Michigan correctional facilities to address prisoner concerns, issues of criminal law, and African-American history. It's a pleasure to have you, Attorney Edison. Mr. Chad Keene is the founder and chief instructor for Apex Defense Solutions, LLC, a firearm training company. He is the co-founder and current president of the Black Bottom Gun Club of Detroit. The club regularly engages in community service projects such as voter registration, community-oriented firearm safety and legal seminars, conflict management workshops for young people. He also serves as the Midwest Regional Director of the National African American Gun Association, the largest African American firearms organization in the country. Mr. King is a brother of Alpha Phi Fraternity Incorporated, Black and No Gold, Gamma Lambda chapter in Detroit, serving as the chair of the chapter's A Voteless People is a Hopeless People National Program Committee. Thank you for being here, Mr. King. And so first of all, I'd like to thank all of our panelists for being here. It's truly an honor to be before you tonight. And what we want to do is have just a brief conversation about some of the do's and don'ts and some of the legal implications as it relates to gun ownership. So I'm going to open this up to the panel. Feel free to jump in as you choose. Actually, I'm going to start. Let's start with Sheriff Washington. Sheriff Washington, can you give us some insight specifically as it relates to some of the differences between open carry and concealed pistols licenses?
Sure. So as it relates to open carry and concealed pistol licensing, first of all, and I don't even like to talk about open carry a lot because I just, as a law enforcement person, I think people really don't get it and they put themselves in a position where, as Durrell was saying earlier, they're arrested and things like that. So open carry is a law in Michigan, and it allows that person to carry a gun not being concealed as long as however they're carrying it, that everyone can see it. And so, I mean, it can't be covered up with a shirt, it can't be covered up with a coat. And what happens with those people who want to do an open carry and they don't have a CPL license, they oftentimes, I'm told, downtown in our Greektown area, and these things were going on, they were open carrying without, and they don't have a CPL license, which you don't have to have a CPL license to open carry, but you got to be very careful that now when you're getting into your vehicle or getting out of your vehicle even, that gun, if you have it on your person, it's concealed. It's concealed, whether it's, it doesn't matter if your shirt is not covering it up or your coat is not covering it up. If you're sitting in a vehicle or any place else where it can't be seen by people, then it's concealed. And oftentimes our young people, especially, they don't get that. They're thinking as long as they putting it on and their shirt or coat is not covering it up, that it's okay. And that's not true. To have a CPL license, you must meet some qualifications and not have a felony or even some misdemeanors that will keep you from being successful in obtaining your CPL license. And I think I'm not here to fight against the Second Amendment. I think those people that want to carry concealed weapons should be able to carry concealed weapons. What you got to do is safely, and there's some levels and things that go along with that. And if you don't have the proper training, and you just want a CPL license, and you get that, and you don't continuously keep yourself abreast of laws and put yourself in scenarios that, you know, what do you do if things happen? As I teach my students, you always have to go through scenarios, because in all the things that you have going on in your life, now you say, and I want to add a gun to that with all the responsibility that comes with that. So CPL, having a CPL license is not just about, I want to carry a gun. It's about being trained on how to safely store that weapon, how to, knowing when to shoot, and knowing gun safety, how that gun operates. So the differences are pretty, it's pretty different. And oftentimes I've seen where people when they do want to open carry, they have gun, and they have no clue of how a gun works. They just want to put on a gun and open carry to say I have a gun. And I tell my students again, and I'll stop. Open carry to me is the craziest thing you can do while wearing a gun. You know, if people don't know why you're exposing a weapon, why you're walking down the street with a weapon, with all the mass shootings that are going on, it makes folks nervous in our area that people are walking around open carrying, because they know that they don't know what's about to happen, if anything, and it makes folks nervous. And if you're open carrying and you just want to do that, and say you're in a store or you're in a bank, well, it's banks is probably going to be a little different, but if you're in a store or whatever, you're open carrying, now someone comes in that store who has intentions on robbing the store or doing whatever. When they see that you have a gun and it's exposed and you're just simply open carrying, if they're in there for the wrong reason, you're going to be the first one that they kill or they shoot or whatever happens because they know you have a weapon. I've been in law enforcement 39 years. I've carried a gun for 39 years, pretty much every day of my career, 39 years in law enforcement. And if you didn't know I was a law enforcement officer, you would never know I have a gun. You will never know I wear a gun because it's not for people to see. It's for my protection in the event that my life is in immediate danger. So I'll stop there.
We appreciate that explanation, Sheriff Washington. You know, typically a lot of folks think as it relates to open carry, you can just go and pick up a gun and carry it wherever or whatnot. This question is for First Assistant Chief Bedison. Chief Bedison, as it relates to where you can and cannot go as it relates to open carry or with the concealed weapons license, pistols license, can you give us a little context on what that looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are places that are designated where where's a certain number of people or folks, for example, you can't open carry into Ford Field, Comerica Park, stadiums, or other places that are private property as well, where the owners of those properties designate that you can. However, there are places that you can carry a weapon via open carry that you wouldn't expect. For example, public buildings. We've had folks come into our police stations, open carry, going into various governmental buildings, open carry. And so various public gatherings. And so what the sheriff spoke to, it makes folks nervous, all right? With the time and place that we live in, where we as local law enforcement, the Detroit Police Department, you see a couple guys or a guy walking down the street with an AR-15, just through the neighborhood, just pick any neighborhood in Detroit, just walking down the street, AR-15 and or AK-47 or whatever, we get 911 calls and it terrifies our seniors, it terrifies the children. And so they're calling DPD saying, hey, please investigate this person. And you know, oftentimes we will tell them, hey, they're open carrying. And so we will go to investigate, but there are limits of what our investigation can even entail because we cannot infringe upon their Second Amendment right and the laws in the state of Michigan as far as stopping an individual from open carrying. However, many folks don't understand the limitations of the laws, and that's why I'm so grateful to this panel to be able to get the information out the correct way. We've seen individuals who have been open carrying in winter, and then they'll have it on their hip, but at some point when they put their coat on or they transverse from inside to outside, when their coat covers the weapon, now it's concealed. Now they're breaking the law, and as a result, they can be arrested. So those are some examples in places where you can and cannot open carry.
Thank you for that explanation, Chief Bedison. You know, I think many people within the context of gun ownership and transporting firearms don't know the nuances. And I think more than anything, the CJC here at the Detroit branch wanted to get some clarification because we've encountered many stories of individuals that have, you know, carried firearms and not known the proper procedures and rules and laws as it relates to that and have got caught up in the criminal justice system. This question is for Judge Thomas. Judge Thomas, as a justice on the bench, and you see many, you know, cases specifically as it relates to gun violence and then incidental cases as it relates to carrying weapons and firearms. What suggestions would you provide individuals in the community as it relates to carrying firearms, and what, in your experience, have you seen as it relates to diversion programs that can assist folks that may trip those lines unknowingly?
Well, you know, my first suggestion is to know the law. And a lot of the defendants that end up before me have actually gone out, they've purchased guns legally. especially when it pertains to CCW. So carrying a concealed weapon either on their person or carrying a concealed weapon in a motor vehicle. A great many of these defendants have purchased their guns legally. They've gone to a gun range. They've taken the classes that they need to take in order to get their CPL. They just haven't gone that extra step to get their CPL. And they have been operating under the assumption that until they get their CPL, they can open carry. And as has already been mentioned, they're not open carrying correctly, right? They don't understand that you may be open carrying correctly, but the moment that you get in your car, now this is a CCW motor vehicle, because there's no such thing as open carrying in a motor vehicle. So I'm glad that this forum is taking place, because my hope is that this information will get out there and these defendants won't end up in front of me. And we won't have to talk about diversion, and we won't have to talk about probation, because a lot of times these cases, these defendants come before me, and the only thing that they've done is they've carried these guns improperly, they've transported them improperly, and there is no other criminal activity associated with these guns. And this might be something that I don't know, it might not be appropriate for me to say. I think that law enforcement should probably be addressing these issues differently. Maybe they should look at ticketing people instead of arresting them and having them at the DDC for 3 days to charge them with CCW, only to have the prosecutor's office then talk about a diversion program for them. There has to be another way to handle situations where we have citizens who they're breaking the law because they're doing something improperly. They're not really committing a violent offense. So to your question about diversion, I'm probably not the right person to ask. Prosecutor Worthy is probably the person to ask about diversion programs. What I've seen is that at one point, diversion was being offered. So it was a 1-year diversion where defendants' cases were held in abeyance if they didn't pick up any other cases. I can offer a defendant HIDA, but only if they plead as charged. And that's a form of, it's a diversion program. They can be on probation, the Homes Youthful Training Act. They can be on probation for a year, 18 months if they don't pick up any additional cases, and they comply with all of the terms and conditions of their probation. And I'm gonna be honest with you, a lot of times there aren't any terms and conditions. And that's why I think it's so important for these cases to be diverted before they get to me, because it's a waste of judicial resources, and it's a waste of the resources that the probation department has, putting these people on probation for there not to be any terms and conditions. But anyway, so HIDA can be offered, and at the end of that term of HIDA probation, then those cases can be dismissed as if they never had a case. So, you know, it's a felony, it's closed off. There are people that won't be, certain people that will still be able to see it. Law enforcement will still be able to see that someone had a HIDA case. If they try to go to the service, armed forces will be able to see that. So it's helpful in one sense, but then it's not helpful in another. So, you know, from my perspective, we have to figure out a way to deal with these cases in not such a harsh manner. And, you know, there's discretion that can be used on the side of law enforcement as well as the charging authority in our county. I think other counties are doing that. That's the impression that I have, because once it gets to me, there really isn't that much that I can do. Right.
So,
but we also need to look at how do we reduce the interactions that people are having with law enforcement, right? So if you can reduce the interactions that you're having in law enforcement, then you may not get to a situation where somebody's searching your car and finding a gun in your car that you purchased legally and you're transporting improperly.
so Mr. Tyus, if I may, and the judge would probably know better than I would, but some of these things, as it relates, you talked about ticketing versus arresting. I think some of these things are legislative issues, and we can't just do it because we want to do it. I think some laws have to be changed.
Okay, and I hear what you're
Our
saying.
hands are kind of tied as well.
Well, no, I hear what you're saying, but let me posit this to you. If there's no other criminality involved, what is to stop law enforcement from confiscating the weapon and dealing with this as an out of custody warrant.
Well,
It can be
we-
done.
I-
I've seen it
I
can be
don't-
done, and
I
I've
don't think
seen it
we
done.
can, I don't think we can make that decision on whether it's gonna be an out of custody warrant. I
Yep.
think we're bound by law to arrest. And again, until those laws have been changed, because here's what happens, Judge. If we're bound by law to do something and we don't do it, and then something happens the next 10 minutes because we didn't do what we were supposed to do, then we're going to jail. We're at fault. Because
I'm
we have
telling
to do
you,
what we were
it's being done. I'm telling you, I've seen it done.
supposed to do. In
Let me-
Detroit,
Okay.
Yeah,
in Detroit.
Yeah.
Attorney
ahead.
Edison, did you want to
Yeah.
hop in there?
yeah, I'd like to inject here because I think Judge Thomas, Sheriff Washington is focusing in on the problem directly and accurately. There is an issue of over policing, if you will, interacting with our communities. And to just illustrate that, there are statistics that support the over policing of people in Detroit, particularly those who have legally purchased a weapon and those who have legally registered their guns, but perhaps have not gotten their CPL license. For example, CCW arrests alone have doubled across most areas of the city of Detroit, particularly in areas of Corktown, Greektown, downtown neighborhoods where there's almost an increase of 700%. Prosecution for CCW arrests alone has surged 205% for Black people in Wayne County since March of 2020, while prosecutions for non-Black people has declined by 8% during the same period. Looking at statistics before the pandemic, and for some reason, the pandemic has impacted CCW cases, but it speaks to the interaction between police and the citizenry, and that is between January of 2018 and March of 2020, DPD arrests on an average was about 250 people for CCW cases per quarter. Looking at the same period during the pandemic, it has just about quadrupled to approximately 1,017 arrests CCW per quarter. And so the disparate impact is serious and it's real. And so you have people who, and we're not talking about all these arrests for gun cases is going to directly impact violent crimes, because for the most part, these people who are being arrested are law-abiding in all other regards, and certainly would like to exercise, as you referenced, their Second Amendment rights. And so the police on the ground have a lot of discretion. You know, they're arresting for, when I say discretion, if they arrest a person for the felony charge and they know that the gun is registered, they know that there is legally purchased, a person gets in the car with and it's potentially a CCW, they can be issued
We lost you, Earl. You
He went on
muted
mute.
yourself, Jeff. You muted yourself. We can't hear you, Jeff. There you go.
Okay. So that discretion, if it's determined upon the seizure of the weapon that it's legally purchased and registered, then, and it's in a car, they can be charged with the misdemeanor of improper transporting the weapon as opposed to the felony CCW. And so, which has greater and more serious consequences.
Okay.
And so I think that's the import of what Judge Thomas is talking about.
I got you, and thank you for
Can I
that.
add a few things?
Appreciate that. Go ahead,
Mr. King.
Yeah, so a lot has been said so far, and I kind of want to go like way back into history so we can have a little bit of a frame of reference about this gun thing that we're talking about. So, and I'm talking about almost prehistory type stuff, right? Let me lower my hand real fast because I think it's important that we look at this thing in an appropriate context, right? So the human projectile industry is directly responsible for human migration out of Africa. So I want to start by saying all of this gun stuff that we are dealing with today is a direct result of our ancestors and their ingenuity being able to come up with a way to launch projectile from one location to another to get food, to progress, et cetera, et cetera. So let's look at this thing first in the frame of this is something that's normal. Launching projectiles, whether it's with a bow and arrow or whether it's with what we use as a gun today, it's a normal thing, right? We have to get into this habit of normalizing firearms because right now, and what I've heard so far is that we tend to look at firearms in the abstract as deviant behavior or antisocial, when in fact it's something that is quite normal, quite regular. You're talking about we have about 400 million guns in circulation throughout the country. That's what's out there, right? So they're ubiquitous. And I think it's important that we look at these in a normal way and we look at these in a way so that we can make them safe. As it pertains to the open carry issue, I know a lot of people don't like open carry. I know a lot of people don't agree with open carry. I don't always open carry myself, but there are some pretty decent reasons to open carry. Number one, there is a financial burden when you're talking about exercising a fundamental enumerated constitutional right. We're talking about roughly about $100 to take the class and another $115 to get a concealed pistol license, as an example. So there is a financial cost associated with obtaining a concealed pistol license, right? So open carry, what it can do, it can reduce that financial burden from people who are exercising a fundamental human right, not just a constitutional right, number one. Number two, what I think we have to look at is the fact that since 2020, we have seen a explosion of people attempting to carry a gun the right way, the legal way. And unfortunately, our county clerk's office has not been able to satisfy the demand, and there has been exorbitant delays in getting a concealed pistol license application. Not a concealed pistol license itself, but making the appointment to turn in the concealed pistol license application. Right now, we're looking at, as of today, we're looking at, as of Saturday, September 28th, to obtain an appointment to turn in the concealed pistol license application and get fingerprinted. So if you want to talk about all the arrests and people who are carrying quote unquote incorrectly, I think we have to look at the government level and see at least at the county clerk's office, they're not unable to meet the demand, whether it's unable or unwilling to meet the demand. I don't want to disparage anyone, but you're going to have this level of people who are open carrying and quote unquote not carrying the right way, in part because they can't get their concealed pistol license applications turned in.
I guess to that point, Mr. King, I guess before we open it up to Q&A from our community group here, I did want to highlight something really specifically. You talk about some of the programs or resources, and I wanted to open this up to the panel, and I'll give folks an opportunity to respond, as it relates to some of the conversation we had. But what programs or resources can community members take advantage of as it relates to being informed, as it relates to open carry and concealed weapon? And one big issue that we've seen specifically in the news is individuals getting a hold of guns, minors and such, and individuals, young children, dying as a result of guns not being stored safely. So as it relates to those particular issues, what community resources or programs can people take advantage of so they can educate themselves on these issues?
Sure. So I'd like to touch on it a little bit.
I'm gonna open that up on Mr. King. Actually, I'm gonna open that up for Chief Bedison first.
Sure.
So yeah, absolutely, that's a serious issue right there. And one of the things that we do, like a lot of other entities, also is we give away gun locks, right? And so at each one of our precinct stations, we have gun locks that individuals can get to secure their weapons. We have officers that speak at community groups and then give away gun locks there. We partner with community groups. We partner with our activists. We supply them with gun locks. And so we're always pushing that message. And then also just participating in a forum like this, we make ourselves available to have these conversations and discussions. And so right now, I know that Judge Thomas, when she spoke about the discretion of law enforcement and what we're trying to do. One of the things that Chief White has did to reduce the number of CCW arrests since he became chief is oftentimes when an individual will stop CCW motor vehicle, if it was more than one person in a car, they legally can arrest everybody in the car. Chief White stopped that immediately. We put out administrative message. So our officers now have been trained and instructed that, you know, you have to be able to have a direct linkage to the person that's in that vehicle. So just arresting everyone in that car, and it can only belong to one person. So we've done that. We also are in conversations with the prosecutor as well to come up with ways to ensure that it doesn't get to the judge, and so that we can work as far as a deterrent there also. But let me say this, and let me be very, very clear. We have a violence problem in the city of Detroit and across this country. And also, if you look at the national statistics as well, the number of weapons that have been purchased during this pandemic has increased, you know, 300, 400%. So folks have bought a lot of weapons and they're not carrying properly. And as a result, we have had more CCW arrests. And then let me just state this, for example, just as of today in the city of Detroit, thank God we have a 19% reduction in homicide compared to last year. But already 65 of our residents have lost their life in our city. Our non-fatal shootings, we're sitting at 73 people being shot who didn't die. Robberies, they don't typically rob you with their fist or a knife. They typically use a gun. We're at 317 robberies this year compared to 373 last year. And so the department is constantly being challenged by our citizens to make sure that we push down violent crime. So as a result, folks are utilizing weapons, and we have to take weapons out of individuals' hands. And just because a person was arrested for CCW at one particular moment, when you look at criminal histories, they may have not been doing nothing at that time, but it's a lot of individuals in the CCW arrest who are persons who shouldn't have a weapon. So I don't want it to be misconstrued that everybody the Detroit Police Department is arresting, because the majority of individuals, many of them, already shouldn't have been in possession of that weapon in the first place. We have many convicted felons that are also open carrying.
I like to piggyback on AC Bedison's comments as well. We're talking about gun violence. I am sick and tired of these babies finding these guns and killing themselves and killing some other child that's next to them. That comes from people who want to have a gun and have no idea of how a gun operates. It's just as simple as that. Because you're leaving guns carelessly around your homes, or you're going over somebody else's house with a gun in your pocket, and because there's absolutely in your coat pocket and you're taking it off, and a baby going in your coat and finding a gun and killing themselves or someone else. This happens every single month of the year in our area. And it's sad. And it's only sad because when, again, I talked about earlier, when you want to carry a gun, there's a whole lot of responsibility that comes with that. And we're not getting that message out to people who want to carry. You can open carry, you can do, if that's your choice, have at it. but you need to know how to open carry, and you need to know what to do. You need to know how to store a weapon, and you need to know how a weapon functions. And I don't know that that's the case with these people who want to open carry and want to buy guns legally. I don't know if they've been trained or not. I don't know if they've been trained or not. But when these babies finding these guns and killing themselves, that's telling me there's some lack of training somewhere. There's a lack of training. And we have to, as adults and as citizens, and I know everybody has rights to do whatever they want to do with Second Amendment carrying, and I'm for that. But I talked about earlier, there's levels to that. And if we're not up in arms about training and how you carry a gun properly and how you store a gun properly and how a gun operates properly, if we're not about that, we're doing ourselves as adults, firearm instructors, law enforcement, judges, lawyers, we're doing ourselves a disjustice if that can't be at the top of your right to carry a gun.
Judge Thomas?
Okay, I don't think that anybody here is advocating for people who are committing criminal acts to possess weapons. I thought that I made it clear when I discussed this earlier. I am seeing, this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing people who have no criminal record to speak of, none at all, who have purchased their guns legally, who have, to the point of Mr. King, have gone out and tried to do what they need to do in order to get a CPL, and they've received misinformation. They've received misinformation directly, sometimes from the people who they've taken their CPL classes from, with regard to how to carry, how to transport their guns. I don't think anybody here is not upset about the gun violence that is occurring in our community. But if we're going to have a frank conversation about gun ownership, African-American people have a right to carry guns just like everybody else. And if they're doing it legally and they don't have a criminal background and they're not committing any other criminal activities, we should not be infringing upon their right to carry guns because other communities are doing that. Gun ownership does not equal criminal activity. Nobody wants to see kids shot. Nobody wants to, nobody wants to be held up at gunpoint. But what I am seeing is I'm seeing young people who are going out, buying guns legally, taking these classes, listening to people who are giving them bad information, and they're getting caught up in the system. And we have an obligation to ensure that this doesn't follow them for the rest of their lives. At least I feel like I do. I have an obligation, and some of the conversations that we need to have stems from, as Attorney Edison was talking about, how do we limit the interactions that these young people are having with police? And some of it is just about not calling attention to yourself. How you driving in your car? Are your lights working on your car? Is your car registered? Do you have a driver's license? Limit your interaction with the police so they're not searching you. So, those are some other conversations that we need to have. But, criminal activity is different from gun ownership. And I want us to be clear about that. And I want to be clear that I believe that we as African Americans, we have a right to carry guns just like every other community, as long as we're doing it responsibly. We just have to figure out how to get that information out there so people are actually doing that. And I do applaud what Chief White is doing. But undeniably, prior to him, there was a chief in the city of Detroit that encouraged people to go out and arm themselves, was on the national news, encouraged people to go out and arm themselves on the one hand, and then on the other hand, he had ceasefire out snatching people up. So undeniably, that happened as well. So I do applaud what Chief White is doing, but we have to take responsibility for what's going on in the community and how it's caught up some of these young people.
Going to that, Mr. King, if you can enlighten us as it relates to proper procedures as it relates to gun storage, because I'm not knowledgeable on what proper gun storage looks like and how we can appropriately do that as a community. Can you educate us on that?
Yeah, certainly. And I want to thank Judge Thomas for really breaking that down, because what I was hearing was a lot of conflation of criminality and gun ownership and gun ownership and violence. And I think it's really, really important that we understand if we're going to talk about violence, then we really got to get to the meat of it, the root causes of it, and not just look at it as a function of a piece of metal or plastic, right? Those are sociological, socioeconomic, or ecological issues. But to answer your question as it pertains to proper storage, I like to tell the students that I come across that there's a such thing as secure storage and secure staging, right? And I break it down into those two components, because secure storage means that your firearm is going to be unloaded, it's going to be locked up in a safe or a locking device and stored in a way that makes it inaccessible to those who are unauthorized to have possession of a firearm. When I tell my students about secure staging, I'm talking about it's still locked up in a small safe or a lockbox, but it's available at a moment's notice if you need to use it for home defense, as an example, right? So proper ways to secure a firearm would again be, you can get a very, very inexpensive steel lockbox for $25, $35 or something like that. And you can have that in your vehicle. You can have it at home. You can have it near your dresser or near a nightstand, right? If you want to get like a locking cabinet where your firearms are securely stored, meaning they're separated from the ammunition and secure that way, you can get larger safes or larger locking cabinets to do just that when we're talking about transporting with the vehicle for a lawful purpose. And I believe the statute is MCL. So let me be clear, I'm not an attorney. What I tell you is not legal advice. Please consult an attorney for legal questions. But there is a statute on the books as it pertains to proper transporting of a firearm in a vehicle when you don't have a concealed pistol license. That firearm has to be unloaded. It has to be in a closed case designed for firearms, and it has to be in the trunk or the rearmost portion of your vehicle. These are things that I know that I cover in my classes for concealed pistol license, and those who I train as instructors cover in their classes for concealed pistol licenses, right? So these things are all you know, I just want to make sure that we're clear. It's not only that, I know we talked about kids getting access to firearms, right? And that's a huge problem that we've seen, because one is way too many, right? In this city and anywhere in the country, which is why the Black Bottom Gun Club has our quarterly boots on the ground effort. On March 13th, 313 Day, we passed out 600 gun locks in the streets, where we drop into a neighborhood and we pass out gun locks and literature and information and interact with our people so they know about how to secure a firearm, how to secure a firearm both for storage and for staging, right? I want to make, I really want to just crystallize this point that there are ways to get this information that are out there. I'm happy to say that Black Bottom Gun Club, and there are several other instructors that are available around the city and around the county that can be utilized as a resource, that will be willing to be utilized as a resource to help curb some of these problems of kids finding firearms and harming themselves and harming other people. We would love to be a resource to help with someone who would potentially get arrested or what have you. And then if they come and take some classes or engage in community service work with us, where we could support a diversion program or something like that, we would love to do stuff like that. I want to also make it very, very clear that the gun community in Southeast Michigan as a whole is very, very, very engaged. And we absolutely do care about this stuff, right? We care about kids finding firearms that are not secured. We care about the levels of violence in the city. And I'm glad that violence is down. But again, we can't just look at violence as a function of a firearm instead of a function of society. And until we deal with the functions of society that create the violence that we all experience, we're all just putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound.
That's true, Mr. King. And we can't be, the fact that our children are finding guns and killing themselves, I think that has to be a priority. So it can't be the functions of society. It's that our babies can't be at risk because of the functions of society. We have to be trained to make sure that our babies are safe.
I agree.
I have grandchildren. I have guns. My wife has guns. She's law enforcement as well. When my babies come over my house and unexpectedly, we have to run around and make sure that these guns are in a safe place, a safe
Absolutely.
place, because it's just us. So we come home and we just lay guns down. But when unexpected people come over your house, such as these babies, it's our responsibility as adults to do the right thing, to be responsible, to make sure these guns are put away. And it could happen to me. My babies could come in there and I get so distracted and so excited that my gun is laying around. I said in the very beginning, when we choose as adults, with all the things we got on our mind every day, and trust me, I got a ton of them. And we say, and I want to have a gun. We got to own that. We got to own that. That ain't the functions of society. That's us saying we want to have a gun. So it's some things that come with that.
No, I agree with you. And I think that you kind of conflated the two things I was talking about. Those were separate things. I'm talking about violence as a whole, as a function of society.
Okay.
But I agree with you in that as a gun owner, you have an obligation and responsibility to do the right thing. You might not get any extra powers by virtue of having a gun, but you have a heck of a lot more responsibility and levels of accountability that you have to be held to and adhere to. So I agree with you. I agree with you on that.
We saying the same thing. I watch you all the time. I like what you're doing, for sure.
But that's a good pivot, and I appreciate all the good information. One thing I would like to do is kind of open it up. We have a couple questions in the chat for our panelists. One here in the chat that I see, maybe Attorney Edison, you can help us here. Will an expunged conviction prevent a person from obtaining a CPL? Or anyone from the panel? You're on mute, Attorney Edison.
Yeah, I really don't know. I don't know what each county board says about that. On one hand, the expungement erases that conviction from the public, but at the same time, all law enforcement still has that information. And so whether or not it is ultimately used to confer a CPL license or not, I don't have that answer.
I can respond to that. In a previous life, I handled expungements as an attorney. And so we were successful in getting people expungements, and then they were able to obtain a CPL. I think, but as we're talking about expungements and obtaining a CPL, I think that we also need to have a conversation about felon in possession. All felonies are not created equal, but felonies can keep you from being able to possess a gun. We do have a mechanism in the state of Michigan by which you can have your right to bear arms restored. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. And so as we talk about the CCW cases, I've seen defendants before me who may have had a felony 10 years ago, and now they're stopped with a gun that they purchased legally, even though they had a felony. Somehow they purchased this gun, and then they're charged with felon in possession of felony firearm. And of course, the felony firearm carries that mandatory 2 years. And in a lot of those instances, those defendants were in a position where they could have had their rights restored to carry a gun. And so, then they would have just had the CCW and not the felon in possession and then the felony firearm that they were facing. So, that information is out there. A lot of this, people Google everything. They get on WebMD and Google. So a lot of this information is out there. It can be Googled. They can find this information out. And, as Mr. King said, some of these things do have a financial cost that goes along with it. And that could be an impediment to people having their rights restored or even getting their CPLs. But, this is, if you want it, you have to be willing to work for it. So I would just put that out there.
Appreciate that information, Judge Thomas. It appears we have a question from the group here. Miss Mercedes McNeil, did you want to unmute and get the panel your question? You have the floor.
Hi, I'm Mercedes McNeil. I just have a question, a statement. I'm one of the ones, I have a clean criminal record. I've never been to prison, well, jail before until I was stopped by the police. He told me that he pulled me over for distracted driving and I was carrying my firearm. I was in the car alone with no one else. And I was there for 3 days. It was the holiday, so it could have been longer, he said, but I have my firearm for protection. I'm a single mother working. I'm leaving out the door 4:35 a.m. to go to work alone, and I have a 4-year-old son. So my gun was confiscated, and I was just trying to see if there was some type of diversion program for these type of situations in regards to having no other criminal history, nothing basically besides this first incident.
Mercedes, did you say you had a CPL license?
I don't have my CPL, but my gun was purchased legally. I did take a class, but by the time I was able to, I still haven't gotten an appointment to go into to do, I guess, the next step, the fingerprinting and everything. The certificate had expired by then. So I did not have my CPL at the time, but my gun was purchased legally. They did the background check and everything that I needed to purchase the gun, but at the same time, it was just misinformation. No information was given at the time of purchase from the place that it was purchased at.
Can I add a few things just briefly on that? So Ms. McNeil, first, I apologize that was your experience. I'll say that if law enforcement can use discretion when you're speeding, they can use discretion with these types of quote unquote improper carrying, right? Number one. Number two, her case speaks directly to the problem of the delay in the Wayne County Clerk's Office with processing concealed pistol license application appointments. You can go to Oakland County, Macomb County, Washington County, the surrounding counties, and get a same day or same week appointment after you take your concealed pistol license class. With the size of our county and the money and things that come in and out of our county, there's no way that we should be waiting until September 28th for someone who takes a class on Saturday till September 28th to get the appointment to turn in the concealed pistol license application, period. This is something that this is an issue that all of the instructors in the area, particularly those who service Wayne County or our students who are in the Wayne or are in Wayne County, this is something that we face all the time, and it's incredibly frustrating.
Can I say something to that? And I don't sit here to speak for the county clerk at all, but here's what's going on with that. There is a process, and this is all since COVID, and nobody's working. You can't get people to work. I don't even know how people making a living. I don't know. I don't even know how they're paying their rent a house, no, because nobody's working. Nobody's working. And you all know that. And so the county clerk, Wayne County being the largest county in the state of Michigan, at processing somewhere around 200 or so applications a day. It's a lot. And again, I'm not here to make excuses, but what happens is there's a link that I give my students that comes from the Wayne County Clerk's Office. You get online and you make your appointment. Yes, your appointment today is April 12th. It's going to say, it could possibly say your appointment is July or August. September. I tell my students, do the appointment and make it the appointment, because I'm telling you what's going to happen. I'm telling you what's going to happen. For a fact, that September date is going to turn into a June date. I promise you, because I send my students there all the time. And they say, oh, I got called. I had a September date, but I got called in June, or I got called earlier, and I was able to get my license. You just got to follow the process. You can't not now because I have a September date. And I gotta wait till September to start carrying improperly. Just go through the process. It's going to move up. It's going to move up. And in Wayne County, Oakland County, Washtenaw County, these places, they're not processing as many a day. And so
that's
I
not
just want to
necessarily
jump in
accurate.
real quick.
That's
I'm
not
sorry,
accurate.
Mr. King said that's not true.
That's not necessarily accurate, because when you look at the rates of gun ownership in Wayne County versus Oakland County per capita, they're equal.
Maybe
Right.
they have more people. Maybe they have more people working in Oakland County.
And okay, all right.
I don't know. I don't know.
I
But
wanna-
Chief, better than get in here.
So even if it moves up to June, you still talking about 60 days or so for somebody in Wayne County versus somebody in a neighboring county. That's still unacceptable. That's still unacceptable.
I said I'm not here to speak for the county clerk.
I know.
The
I
other-
understand.
But that is true. When I tell my students who lives in Oakland County, blah, blah, I say you're going to get your CPL license much quicker than those in Wayne County.
Well,
I'm not hiding behind that. That's the
So-
truth. It's a fact.
Given,
I just wanted to speak to Ms.
just one-
McNeil real quick. Ms. McNeil, I definitely hear you, and the chief has heard, and we've heard a lot of examples like that. And so we're in conversations with the Wayne County prosecutor, the chief. In a case like that, we have no interest in somebody who's nonviolent, who, with the case that you expressed, as far as going through the process, didn't get it with this backlog. I know that as of right now, individuals who do have a CPL and they couldn't get it renewed and it was expired, the Wayne County prosecutor is not even charging them. And so Chief White is looking at further extending mechanisms for our officers to use discretion. And so with a case like yours, I definitely want to follow up with you to see what we can do as a department, working with the prosecutor to be able to help you in your instance, or the judges, whatever we can do. And then also creating a way so that that we have a way so that we can mitigate this where it doesn't occur going forward. But the chief, and not only that, matter of fact, was it last week, Chad, Kofi, Chief White, and the prosecutor, we were all on a call discussing mechanisms just like this as to how we can ensure that folks who have misinformation is not getting arrested, and that we're using the appropriate discretion to make sure that we're not criminalizing folks. So I just want to put
Mercedes
that
would
out.
have called me. Mercedes is a member, grew up as a baby in my church, and her mother is my friend. I just wish she would have called me when those things happened, so that we could best have possibly served you a little better. Right?
Okay,
Michelle?
and
I
I'm
would
just
like to
gonna
say,
add,
I would like to say,
We have a hand raised.
I just want to say, hopefully this will be resolved before it gets to circuit court, and then this case doesn't get assigned to me, because then I'll have to recuse myself since all this discussion has been had.
I would like to say one thing that I would like to highlight. It is good to have persons of color in positions such as chief of police and Wayne County sheriff that can, and as well as having African-American attorneys and people of color judges on the bench to advocate and assist as it relates to a lot of the issues we're seeing in our community. I see we have one more hand, and then I'm going to close it out, and we're going to turn it over to our leader, Reverend Dr. Wendell Anthony. We have one more question from Danielle. Did you have a question, Danielle?
Actually, my question was answered, and I appreciate it. So I will turn this slide over to one of our guests that has a question.
It was a
about-
hand raised also.
Yes. Thank you.
From Attorney Diallo.
So good evening. Now, we're a rubber hit the road, right? We have seen an incredible increase of CCWs, and what that does, so we're clear, if our children aren't able to compete with other people's children for these CCW cases, right? If they're entitled to have a gun, we need to do something. And really, it's not everybody that has a gun legally commits an illegal act. We just need to be able to get through to the people. This is how you carry. There is no such thing as open carry. Somebody, I believe, is making money to the game with that, because I think somebody's buying something, right? To teach people, to tell people, hey, you can do it this way, but you can't. But the reality is, the young lady that you just heard from that spent 3 nights, that cannot be understated. 3 nights in a facility. And I've been to the DDC, so it's not going to be the rich or anything. You may be in a cold room, whatever it is, right? Maybe it's not supposed to be, but that shouldn't happen. That just should not happen. The people that I see now, really, I got some bad dudes too that I might represent. The homicides, the carjackings, the robberies. People are scared too. So if you don't want to be a victim, that's that Second Amendment thing, whether you agree with it or whether you don't. And we just have to find a way to talk to each other, so we're not conflating somebody who stores a weapon improperly and babies pick them up. Of course we hate that, right? But let's look at Oxford. And we have to be honest about the racial breakdown. Who can own guns? Because remember, in Wayne County, we got Livonia, Garden City, Plymouth. I'm looking and listening to the things and the deals they get. There is a disparity, and we need to stop using us against us and say, what can we do to help? Thank you.
Training.
Yeah. With that being said, I would like to say this has been a fruitful conversation. We do plan on having another forum as it relates to this series, because this is, as was stated, I think by Mr. King and everyone on our panel, as it relates to personal responsibility and gun ownership, there is another side to the gun issue that's separate and apart from that we are going to take a deep dive in. I want to thank our panel for participating and providing their expertise and insight and experience as it relates to the issues presented. And I was also informed that unfortunately, Prosecutor Worthy was unable to make it this evening because she was ill. So we wish her all the best and blessings to her. At this time, it's my pleasure to turn it over to our chairman, Dr. Anthony, Reverend Anthony. Reverend Anthony, do you like to take the floor?
Thanks, Dorian. Let me say good evening to everybody. And certainly I want to thank the panelists for their professional and personal and public and poignant commentary and counsel on these issues. I appreciate Deputy Chief Bettison from the perspective of Detroit Police, and also the new sheriff, not new now, getting ready to come up on a second term, Raphael Washington, and certainly Judge Thomas for her judicial acumen, and Brother Chad for his historical recounting of how from the continent we have been using and gave a lot to the world, and it's been misused and confused in terms of how we deal with it. I guess for me, it's and Attorney Jeffrey Edison, longtime friend and brother, who's been involved in the struggle for justice forever, and so we appreciate Jeff. I guess I view all of you basically as being on the same page. It's just a question of how we go about getting there. And I don't think any of us want to see children hurt, abused, killed, anyone killed unnecessarily through accident or intentionality rooted in rage or anger. And I think that's the issue. We live in a very violent society. America is a violent nation. I mean, let's be clear about that. It's a violent country, no matter how you cut it. And you said a number of things, but we have to strike a balance between the Second Amendment and the right to carry arms, and the right and the responsibility to be responsible once you have those arms. I do hope, as Bettison indicated, that some assistance can be offered to Sister Mercedes McNeil. She reflects a centered problem that we have in our community. She reflects that. A single Black woman getting up, or any woman, but a single Black woman with a child getting up early in the morning by herself to go to work, trying to find someplace, I guess, to take her child, and she's out there. Hell, I mean, who can blame her for having a weapon and protecting herself? That's common sense. Now, going through the process is essential. We gotta follow the process, but Judge, there has to be a better way to deal with that than to put her in jail for 3 days on a holiday and keep her away from her child and to deal with her job situation, which she needs as employment. I don't know if you all remember that when Coleman Young was in office and the whole question of violence and guns and all that was being raised, and they were saying to Coleman, Mayor Young, you ought to do something about the weapons that are in the city of Detroit. There's too many guns. And Coleman said, how in the hell y'all think I'm gonna get rid of the guns in Detroit when you got all these hostile suburbs all around me? When they get rid of their guns, then we can talk about getting rid of our guns. Now, I'm saying there are too many guns. I agree, Bedison. I agree, Raphael. There's too much violence. However, we live in a violent nation. We cannot get away from that. I'm responding to the fact that, you know, even when we go legal, there's still some issues. Philando Castile legally carried his weapon. Amir Locke legally carried his weapon, and they were killed. And those are just a couple that come, there are others. And so what I'm simply saying is that there has to be training, Raphael. There has to be training, and there has to be training and accountability on the part of law enforcement. You all know that you got some rotten apples in your department. The Michigan State University study on the Michigan State Police shows the disparity in terms of how they deal with Black people and brown people versus the other people. When Black youth are stopped by police, they're taken to jail. When white youth are stopped by police, they're taken home. There's a difference. It's called discretion. It's called using some common sense to indicate, do I really need to deal with this like this? Can I just talk to this young man, can I take him home and have a little conversation with his mama, his dad, or his grandmama, and say, get your boy together, get them together, so I don't have to deal with, can I do that? That to me should be a part of training. I do think that the new police chief, James White, has a psychological and a sociological thinking and understanding and perspective that he's bringing to the department. It's not so much a militaristic us versus them kind of mentality and perspective. I think we have to have balance. You know, I'm not a criminal. I ain't gonna hurt nobody. I ain't trying to kill nobody, but I got a couple of guns in the crib. I got a CPL, and I'm a man of the cloth. I ain't gonna hurt nobody, but Bedison, if somebody come on in on me, I mean, come on now, when you do that, you asking for it. Now, I might feel charitable and try to do them, but my wife ain't the same way. She want a shotgun. And she's not afraid to, I mean, I'm just letting you know what time it is. That is real out here. Black people are concerned. When I see how the militia is rising, when I see what they have done at the state capitol, when I see that they can threaten to kill the governor and get off, when I see that there can be an insurrection at the nation's capital, and all the stuff that is done, and knowing that if that had been Black people, they would have been mowed down all over the steps based upon this. I mean, it causes me pause. And so while I want us to be, I don't want us to be violent. There should be training. There must be training, and perhaps there should be training required once you purchase a weapon, that you must go through some degree of training. I'm just trying to deal with it in a way in which it makes sense. You who are professional police officers and lawyers and judges, you know more because you're dealing with the stuff on a day-to-day basis. You see this. I'm dealing with it from a street level in terms of being out here, and from an NAACP perspective, the disparity, the lack of equity that I see in our community. And so while I'm with you, and I'll do everything that I can, and the organizations will, to try to bring down violence, but at the same time, we also have to make sure that we are training and we are not being mistreated based on our color, even when we do what is right. And even when we have the legal accoutrements that accompany that. If you got weapons, lock them up, put them up. So many of us, I guess, and I was glad to hear Brother King articulate how to carry or transport a weapon in your car or in a vehicle. And it's in the situation, you just don't take your gun and put it in the glove compartment or put it in the armrest next to you. I mean, there's a methodology by which you do that. But Raphael and Bedison, that goes to training. That goes to educate, because a lot of people don't know that, Chad, in terms of what you just said. They don't know that that's a part of it, but we have to make that a part of it. So I'm very glad that you all took the time to address this issue. And Dorian, there has to be a part 2 or a part 3 until we can get this thing right. One time is not enough, but I appreciate it. I know Raphael trains. I've gone through some training with him, and he's trained at our church, and that's important. And so we want training, but we want to exercise our right, and we don't want to be mistreated because of who we are, rather than anything that we've done. What's good enough for Oakland County, Macomb and Petoskey and Washtenaw should be good enough for Wayne County. Even though we are big, that don't make us bad. And I'm just simply saying that there's a better way to do it. But I appreciate you all. I thank you very much for your information. And we want to work with you to bring down violence, but at the same time, we want to exercise our rights. We want balance. And that's what the NAACP is about, equity of opportunity for everybody. So thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, Dorian, very good forum. And I hope that we got some good stuff from it as we continue to deal with it as a result. And I didn't want to put on no preaching cap, but y'all touched a little bug in my spirit. This is an important topic. Yes. And we just want to do what's right. So God bless everybody. This is Holy Week. On the Friday, he went down, but on Sunday morning, he got up. So he went down, he got up. So if we've down, we got to get up too. That's what this is about. It's getting up time, y'all. So let's get up.
You want to make the announcements regarding our upcoming activities?
Thank you, Miss Laura. I almost didn't see you. You're so short over there, but thank you very much. I do want to mention the Freedom Weekend coming up. We're approaching our 67th annual Fight for Freedom Fund dinner. We have Freedom Weekend coming beginning April 28th through the 29th. Jobs fair, information for young people, jobs. We also have a faith leaders breakfast with Reverend Dr. Freddie Haynes, one of the foremost preachers in America. We have the labor leaders luncheon on Saturday with the brother that founded the Amazon Labor Union in New York, Christian Smalls. This is historic. Young brother, 33 years of age, who fought against the big boys and was able to unionize folk on New York's Staten Island. He's coming in town to talk about what he's done with the labor unions, and that's available on Saturday, April 29th. Also, you can go to Detroit freeinstitute.org and get information, or you can call 313-347-2834. And you can get information about registering for this. It's going to be a very outstanding weekend. And then Sunday, we have our Fight for Freedom Fund dinner at the Huntington Place in downtown Detroit. This year, we're honoring Judge Cynthia Diane Stevens, who's stepping down from the appellate court, with our Ida B. Wells Freedom and Justice Award, Gary Torgo with our James Weldon Johnson Lifetime Achievement Award, Representative Sarah Anthony with a Great Expectations Award, and also Christian Smalls, the brother that I mentioned from Amazon, with the other Great Expectations Award. We're looking forward to a magnificent evening. You can contact the Detroit NAACP, secure your tickets. Freedom ain't free. Our theme this year is freedom is expensive, but tyranny is unaffordable. We got to decide whether or not we're going to go back as a nation or go forward to continue on this situation of freedom, justice, and equity. So I appreciate that NAACP moment, Ms. Lowe, and hopefully everybody will see you at some point during that weekend. Thank you so much. God bless you all. Did I cover everything, Ms. Lowe?
Yes, you did, Reverend. Thank you.
So eyes high now. Thank you. Since I'm finished with you, I appreciate you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay.
Good week.